I can remember, or probably when I was, say, about 7, when people asked me to describe myself, I always said, I'm this little girl who loves sport. I said that at 7, and I continue to say that 35 years later. We had a lovely city back then. We weren't a pub city, nor the noisy traffic. So growing up, my father was a police officer, so I grew up in a police colony. So for me, the concept of cricket was these 10, 15 boys in our colony, one bat, one ball, no concept of a non-striker, and you either had the electricity pole or bricks as the wickets. And I was one of those people who always wanted to play with them. It's not that I wasn't wanted, because there's always a joker in the pack, and I was that lonely clown. Everybody wanted me in their team because I was the most sought after fielder. When you are playing in a colony, the ball is bound to go under the cars, behind the compound walls, and not to forget the gutters. So I was this petite little thing who could go anywhere, maneuver myself anywhere. So they just loved the fact that I had an extra hand at fielding. Once done with batting and bowling, when the fielder, would go and ask them, there was always this smirk of saying, you don't belong here, who's going to give you batting? And believe me, I think till the time that my brother owned a bat, I hadn't got batting. So when my brother wasn't around, I actually took a bat, and I said, if you're going to allow me to bat, I'm going to come with the bat today. So that's the only time I ever got to bat. I was very fortunate to have watched matches live at the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium from a very young age. Then again, it was not by choice, but by design. I have an older sister, Manjula, who's 7 years older than me, cricket crazy, and she needed that one person to go with her because my mom wouldn't allow her to go to the stadium alone. So whether I liked it or not, I was dragged along to the stadium. The popcorn, there used to be one thelawala uncle who would carry that popcorn for, I think, 50 paisa for salt popcorn and 75 paisa for caramel popcorn. And that was the bribe I got. I think in 1988, I was 7 when things changed. It was an India-New Zealand match. My only interest was there were open boundaries back then. I always had a autograph book in my hand, and I wanted to go take autographs. There was this huge noise in the stadium. Everybody is celebrating, and it wasn't, it was a dismissal of an Indian batsman. Sorry, I still can't get this batter thing. I'll stick to a batsman. So suddenly there was this loud, cheers, and there's an Indian batsman who's just got dismissed. I think about 25, 30 years later, when I did meet Mr. Hadley and I told him, I watched you as a little girl. His response was, thank you for making me feel very old. The 19 Karnataka was very special for especially school-going kids like me because it saw the emergence of some fantastic cricketers India produced, Dravid, Kumble, Srinath. They also gave us a sense of wanting to watch domestic cricket. It's something I really enjoy covering right now. That kind of gave a flight to a lot of my dreams. And one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was the newspaper cuttings. I cut out pictures of those people. They were in between my textbooks. They also made it to a scrapbook, which interestingly, years later, I think my sister pointed it out to a cricketer and he hasn't stopped embarrassing me since. So it's like, I saw this whole entire gamut of cricketers coming in and it gave me a lot of, and that's when I got thinking, why the hell didn't I ever think of becoming a cricketer? I played hockey at the national level, but then by the time I actually thought I wanted to be a cricketer, thank you, I think I was overaged. But the challenge of being a cricket writer for me was, there was always this barb, whether it's a player, a colleague, or a random person. Has she ever held a bat in her hand? So I actually made those nice diagrams. Any unsuspecting curator I would catch in any small ground and ask him about wickets, about soil. And I would actually make notes. Every single night I sat. And one night I remember my dad walking up to me and said, I only wish you had studied half as hard as you do with this cricket. You probably would have been a rank holder. Now, but who was to tell my dad the reward of, having, poured over textbooks would never have been, the joy of, describing Mahendra MS Dhoni execute his helicopter shot or the mean swing and the Yorkers of Bumrah. That was the reward, which I don't think my dad even understands till date. Also, the funnier part of being a sports journalist, a cricket journalist in particular, was how do you keep the fan away from the journalist? I remember a press conference of a former South Africa captain. So I had the hots for him, and I went and sat in the first row of the press conference. But before I went and sat there, I put my dictaphone on, put no pen, no paper, because my eyes were only on him. I folded my hands, crossed my legs, and I sat through it. I don't remember asking a single question because there was everybody else. I was only going to watch him. Press conference over, I picked up my dictaphone. It was time for me to write. The only thing that came out were tears from my eyes because I had forgotten to put the battery. So I had absolutely no recording of that. And there was a very friendly Mumbai journalist who actually gave me his dictaphone, and he said, you can hear it and type it. That was a hard lesson learned on having to separate a fan moment from a journalist. There was always this people's, barbs and jibs about saying that she doesn't belong. There were many times where I have slept in the night thinking, okay, this is the end of the road for me. But somehow I've woken up every single morning telling myself, okay, that was yesterday. Let's get up, kick some butt. Staying with cricket and cricketers, the amount they touch our lives, and there's a couple of things that I would want to share with you all. Your real life heroes. I've had those moments, but I've also had these moments where I've felt, the human side. It's also another thing that sport, especially cricket, teaches you, is to stand up for yourself. And it's taught me the very hard way. When people send me those negative messages, and believe me, it happens more with women journalists. I've received a lot of messages where, people have said, you've written crap, you don't know your cricket. And these are people who otherwise would have said, thank you, ma'am, for a good story. So one such cricketer, 2 days after I wrote a story, sent me a message saying, excellent timing of your article. This was, I think, half an hour after his team was bowled out for 80 in a T20 match. I'm generally a non-confrontational person. I thought that person had stretched my limit. And I come from a newspaper industry where giving headlines and smart lines is my bread and butter. I wrote back to him and I said, thank you. I only wish you had timed the ball half as well I've timed my story. You would still be playing. From that day till today, I haven't heard from that player. This journey would have never been complete without my family. I'm somebody who's on the road, say 35, 40 days between October and Feb. In between balancing being a good daughter, a good sister to my siblings, and a loving aunt to my niece and my nephews, I don't think any of them ever allowed me to feel any little or any way inferior. But to encapsulate what it has been for me, that little girl who stood, on the boundary line of the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium, waiting to take autographs, today sits in the press box of that stadium, writing and living a dream which I wouldn't give up for anything in the world. Thank you.